when I woke up, very confused. She said, "You almost died last night. In fact, no one can believe you were alive."
I went into the games not knowing what was coming.
As humans, we just hate uncertainty.
We just sensed that it was out there.
You have to start somewhere.
We're all programmed to push ourselves even farther.
This is On the X, an IRONCLAD original. Welcome to On the X. My guest today is Tia-Clair Toomey-Orr, a 7-time CrossFit Games champion, Olympic weightlifter, and one of the most dominant athletes in CrossFit history. She's redefined human performance and resilience from her early days as a sprinter and middle distance runner to standing atop the CrossFit podium for 6 consecutive years. Beyond competition, she founded Proven Fitness, a globally recognized training platform helping athletes unlock their full potential. She's also the author of The Heart is the Strongest Muscle, where she shares the mindset and drive that made her a champion. A competitor, a coach, an entrepreneur, and now a mother, she continues to push boundaries, proving that strength comes in many forms. So here we go with Tia-Clair Toomey-Orr on the X. So pre-CrossFit, what was your athletic background kind of growing up before you even got into CrossFit?
So I did a lot of running, a lot of track, cross country. I ran cross country in like the first half of the year, and then in the back end of the year, for the last 6 months of the year, I ran 800 and 1500 meters. Oof. And, you know, like I really focused on them, but alongside that, I also did other sports like swimming in the mornings just to, you know, test my body in a different fitness. It was obviously low impact on, you know, how the body felt with all the impact of the running. That also complemented what we call nippers. It's like it's a program for kids as they get older, where you learn how to read the surf, you swim in the ocean, you paddle on like rescue boards, you know, place flags in the sand, and you have to Google it if you've never heard of it before. Yeah, most people haven't, but it is a really big deal here on the coast of Australia. And, you know, so many kids do it as they're growing up that they actually have like carnivals and, you know, state titles and everything. So it's quite a big deal. But as those athletes grow up, and if they want to continue following that journey, they turn into what we call Ironmen. But it's very different to the, you know, worldwide known Ironman, where it's, you know, the swim, the bike, the run. This is like a swim, a ski in like it's not a canoe, but it's like a boat where you paddle side to side, and then like a rescue board, so you're paddling on your knees. And, you know, it's all done in the ocean. You do it in Hawaii. You do it actually in quite some incredible places around the world, but that's kind of what you grow up to do. So I did a little bit of that. I also played tennis. I did football, dabbled a little bit in soccer. What else did I do? A lot of running. I did a lot. I did a lot.
What is that thing called again? That ocean sport?
It's actually called nippers. NIPPLES.
Oh wow. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And you know, you'll see them on YouTube, and they've got these little caps on, and you know, it's tied around their chin. And that just determines, you know, like what club they're from. So along the coastline of Australia, you have all these different life saving clubs, and you know, then they all come together and they compete. Well, I actually was just showing my husband on Sunday what it was like, and there's just like hundreds of little kids all over the beach, you know, running crazy. But it's just so great for little kids, one, to get outside, but two, to read the surf, not be scared of the waves. And you know, especially when I started CrossFit and it was in Carson, we had a lot of swimming. Like, you know, one of the events was swimming, and I was like, oh, this is a breeze, because I've done this so many times, where I look at young athletes today, and they've done CrossFit for, well, since I was 12 years old, a really long time.
Yeah.
But that's all they've done, that athleticism that they've almost missed out on.
Yep.
Doesn't help them in the CrossFit or the CrossFit Games or whatever it might be, because they're just so focused and that they've only done, weightlifting, or they've done single modality stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your cut on that? That's because I tend to agree with you on that, where I think, look, my kids, they grew up doing CrossFit with my wife and I were trainers, and we owned a gym for a while and all of that, but they were also doing athletics, traditional sports, whatever that was. Yep. And I'm a big proponent of, I think you need both, or I shouldn't say need. I think it's a good idea to do both, right? To your point, I think the sort of foundational movements and strength and all of that you can get from CrossFit is great, but I think the sort of adaptability of it and the agility and the sort of skills that you can build through a sport, not to mention the camaraderie and everything else that might go along with it, I think is really good too. Are you in the same boat on that?
100%. And obviously, that me having a daughter now, I can see how easy it is to influence them in things that I think is important and all that. And of course, as a parent, you're trying to guide and provide a platform for your kids to, pick and choose and, be drawn to what they're interested in personally. But in my opinion, I do truly believe CrossFit is so beneficial to helping in, the strength and the fitness and the training methodology of those sports. So say, for example, if your kids are into soccer, I think CrossFit can really complement the training for that soccer game or for the soccer season, where I find a lot of kids, they start soccer, they, go into their CrossFit, and then they want to leave soccer to really just hone in on their CrossFit, because CrossFit is it creates variety. It's so enjoyable with the community. And, when you really nail all the elements that CrossFit provides, from the gym, the coach, the programming, everything, you can't really get away from it, because it's just so it's addictive. And I, as a parent for Willow, will always be so encouraging, where I know, you can't just do CrossFit. You have to do other things, because in CrossFit, you're not learning to throw a ball or kick a ball.
Yep.
In CrossFit, you're not learning to swing a racket and that hand-eye coordination. Maybe if your programming was a little bit out there, yes, but it's not always out there, because they're trying to cater to the general population, right? The mums and dads who are coming into the gym wanting to, work on their fitness, wanting to build a little bit of strength so they can pick their kids up and all that good stuff. But from a kid's standpoint, I think that they're missing a lot when it comes to their development and skill. And, I'm very, I've always been very open about this, because as much as I've obviously dedicated my whole life to CrossFit and, really chasing after CrossFit and the world championship in the CrossFit Games, I've always been so grateful for the experience and the foundation that I've laid as a kid with all the sports that I did.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. And your daughter is how, 1.5 at this point?
I can't wait. Well, no. I don't say I can't wait, because everyone said, don't say can't wait, embrace the moment. But I tell you what, once you start getting to, 1, 2, at least I can tell you how old she is. But now I've got to count the months.
Yeah, right.
She's about 20 months.
20 months.
She's
okay,
about 20 months. Yeah. She's just under 2.
Yeah. So
growing up so fast.
She's got a little ways to go. I can't even remember at this point. How early did they start kids with CrossFit Kids?
I guess it really depends, but she's always been in the gym since she
Sure.
was born. So, she'll come in there and she'll swing on the rings and she'll do little burpees and she'll sit on the rower and pull the rower. And, she's very aware of the gym environment, and it's really fantastic to see. But I think I'm going to have a little bit of a resistance when I'm trying to encourage her to do other things because I think she's going to want to just be in the gym herself.
Yeah. Right. Especially with you as a parent. So what brought CrossFit into your life? At what point did it come along for you?
I actually felt like I was just hit rock bottom. I had graduated from school. I went to university and was studying nursing and exercise and movement science and doing what I thought was exactly what you have to do once you graduated school. And then from that moment, I stopped all training. And, that's the first time in my life that I've ever not trained or been physical or anything like that, because I just thought, hey, I've got to dedicate, all this money's going to my school. I've got to dedicate all the time to studying. And, I almost lost myself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started recognizing how unhappy I was. And Shane, my boyfriend, who's my husband and who's my coach and been along with this whole journey, he actually was getting back into his football as well because he worked away in the mines in Western Australia. And during that time, he almost got a little bit unfit himself, but he's always been quite active. And when he started getting back into football, because he used to play rugby union,
yep.
On the preseason, his team took him to a CrossFit gym. And I was trying to get back into my running, so I actually started taking up 400-meter hurdles because I thought, look, I'm just not ready to hit an 800-meter, at sprint pace just yet. Let's just I'm not fast enough for a flat 400, so maybe 400-meter hurdles would be fun to train for, and I've never done it before. So I was getting back into my running, trying to train for that. And then Shane came home one night after his training session with his team, and he goes, hey, I just tried this CrossFit thing, and we never heard of it before. And he's like, I think that this would really help with your running, and I also think you'd probably enjoy it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, next time you and the boys go, because it was kind of it's up to the boys for their preseason if they want to get fit, quite casual. I said, yeah, I'll come with you. So I went with them for one of the night sessions, and I was like, okay, cool, it's a group setting, and, they have these bizarre movements handstand push-ups. And I was quite intrigued, and I was like, oh yeah, can I try this? And the coach didn't let me. And I thought, what a real dickhead, I can't believe he won't let me. He doesn't know who I am. I'm quite capable. And, if you really get to know me, anyone that tells me I can't do something or doesn't give me that option, I really just set out to prove them wrong. Well, because of that interaction, I was like, screw that. I'm not going back because I don't like that guy. But the owner of the gym kept bumping into me at the grocery store and throughout the town because the town was quite small. And by the third time, because I kept saying, yeah, I'll be back. By the third time, I was like, oh, I've just got to go back, get him off my back. And then, the rest is history and he won't bother me again. So I finally went back by myself and signed up for a month because your first session's for free. So I was like, yeah, I'll go and try something for free. Why not? Well, then I had to sign up for a month. And by the end of that month, I was absolutely hooked. And it only took maybe 2 weeks for me. I would go twice a day to get my money's worth because it was quite expensive. And that same coach who told me I couldn't do a handstand push-up, he told me I was going too much. And I thought, this guy, he needs to get out of the picture because I can do whatever I want. And, but, in his defense, he was really just trying to, make sure I wasn't injuring myself or anything like that. So in hindsight, he was actually being a very nice person. But me back then, I was just like, I'm not having this. And I ended up just trying to get my money's worth, going in the morning and then in the afternoon again with Shane. And by the end of the month, I was like, I'm I'm all in, because the friends that I was creating was just so great, like that community. I was at a low point in my life, so that community aspect really helped with like a lot of the loneliness and, the sadness that I was feeling. And then I was also noticing a lot of improvement on my fitness, and it was transferring over into my running. But one thing that I did notice was my running speed was slowing down a little bit because of the weights that I started to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wasn't really like to really focus on running alone. That for me, I just noticed a difference. And it's really funny because come full circle right now, I'm also trying to do high rocks.
Yep.
So the CrossFit and the high rocks right now it's the exact same thing. So I'm trying to really work on bringing my speed up in my running, but I'm losing a lot of strength by doing that because, the more weight that you're lifting, the slower you're going to pull down on your speed. So it's really a fascinating experience, and something that we're trying to finesse and see, at what point can I still do both? But yeah, unless you're just focusing on the one thing, you can't really dedicate like your full attention to both and expect top results for both.
Of course.
But I think that's anything in life, right? If you have 3 different priorities, it's not that you can't achieve all of them. It's just, you may have to give and take a little bit on each priority.
Yeah. Well, I talked to somebody recently who said even that notion is nonsense. It's like there's no such thing as multiple priorities. Like a priority is one thing, right? It should just be, it's one thing by definition.
Yeah.
And people, it was like he was talking about a company or something. It was like, here's our 100 priorities. And he's like, that is absolute nonsense. You cannot have 100 priorities, right? Like it should be one.
Yeah, you really can't. Yeah. And I think, I always come back to like, anyone can do anything. But one thing, like you need an anchor, and that anchor needs to be you. And, you are like the most important person in the world is you, right? In everyone's situation. And so, and when I mean you, I mean like me.
Yep.
You're, the most important person in your life.
Right. Even
though we have loved ones, we have kids that obviously, we live for our kids. But the importance about understanding that is, if you aren't healthy and you're not happy and you're not focusing on, being there for your loved ones, say you're burning the candle at both ends and you're exhausted and tapped out and you can't cook dinner or go to the park with the kids or whatever it is, well, the people you're letting down are your loved ones. So if you are on top of you and you're prioritizing yourself, your health, your wellness, your happiness, you can show up for so much more when you know that you are fit and healthy and ready to go whenever it is. And these are things that I've had to remind myself, because training to be the best in the world at the CrossFit Games, I've had a lot, like I've trained myself so much that I'm so exhausted. And it's so, like, I'm so lucky that I've had such a supportive husband through the whole thing, who's been on the journey with me, and he understands. But I've definitely dropped in that wife, being that supportive wife, because when I'm at home and I'm so exhausted from training and I'm not cooking dinner I'm not saying that wives should be cooking dinner, but it's just more of that, home dynamic where it's like, I'm there present with him as a wife. I'm so exhausted. I'm sitting on the couch, just like absolutely beat. But he also understands it because he's been there with me as a coach, and he understands what I've been going through. And, we're kind of like in it together. So even though, when we're at home, we're absolutely spent, he's also a little bit spent because he's like, been coaching me all day long. So it's,
Sure.
I think that that's also why it's worked really well, because we've been through it together and we're going through each thing. But, having Willow, it reminds me of how important it is to like stay on top of my, hydration so I don't have a headache and then I'm not getting frustrated at her and, all these different things.
So at what point did this and how did it become a serious thing for you? Like at what point did you go, I really want to do something with this? And was there a moment where you realized, I talked to Matt Frazier too and sort of asked him the same thing. Like, was there a point where you're looking around going, I think I'm really good at this. I think maybe I should make a run of making this a career.
Yeah. All right. So when I first started, I told you I was hooked after a month, but I didn't realize that you could compete in it. And I have always been a very competitive person, as much as I've enjoyed my training and my sport and everything, that the competitiveness is what's drawn me to doing all these different sports. And CrossFit was very different. It was challenging me in so many ways. It took me 8 months to understand what a snatch was. Like I'll always go up to the coach and be like, what's this one? Anyways, so when I realized that there was like another level in the gym, and this was just within our 4 walls of our gym, they had this competition squad. And I thought, I'm going to train really hard so that they ask me to be a part of it. And what they do is they would train on the weekends. They'd train throughout the week, but they'd come together on the weekends. And then they'd also every so often go and do these competitions in Brisbane or in Townsville or, along the coast. And I was like, I could do that. Like I could get behind that. And initially it was just with teams. So like I felt like if I worked really hard and they thought that I was good enough, I could be asked to be a part of their team. So sure enough, I did that. And they asked if I wanted to, come to the weekend trainings and everything. So everything was like, progressing the way I had hoped. And then the next year in 2014, the Open came around and I didn't really know much about it, but I thought it was just like this big old thing around the world where everyone competes, on this online competition. And so they said, look, just click on this link and go and register and you'll come up on the leaderboard throughout the 5 weeks. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I did that and I ended up doing so well that I qualified for regionals that year. And no one in our gym had ever done that before. So like a big group of us all went down to watch me compete at regionals. And, like I trained so hard for it. Like Shane would YouTube things like rope climbs. Like I'd never done a rope climb prior to that. And, that time you also got the workout. So, I could understand what I was training for as well. So there was like strict handstand push-ups that I'd never done. So I had to learn what they were. And I went down, I felt really ready as I could be, to be honest. And I was competing, but I absolutely hated it. And I was like, this is shit. I'm not doing this again. Like, this is not what I signed up for. CrossFit's meant to be this community. And don't get me wrong, competition brings a lot of heat and, everyone gets behind it. But they're just some bitches out here, like I'm not a part of this. Anyway, so I left. I was like, I'm not going to let that ruin my experience within my own CrossFit community. But I'm not doing regionals again. Anyways.
That's wild. That's so funny that was your experience. Like I've never heard anybody come back with that like that. And it's
crazy, right?
And mainly the other competitors where it was just.
Yep.
That's so funny because I just view CrossFit as always like we're all hugging and we're all encouraging one another, right?
Yep.
Like for the longest time, I said that CrossFit almost needed a villain. Like I wish there was some villains out, right? Because it's always just like we're all in this together and you cheer on the other competitors and handshakes and fist bumps and all of that. And I was like, it kind of would be fun if there was an asshole in here that was like, screw you guys, right? Like it would make it more fun to watch. So that's really interesting that was your experience.
Yeah, there was a lot of assholes there. And you know what's crazy is I was looking on the male competitive side and they looked like they were having a blast. And they were fist bumping and doing exactly what you're talking about. And I was like, I want to be a part of that, not this shit, you know? Like, what the heck?
Funny.
Anyways, so, you know, like as far as my CrossFit competitive career, that had ended right there and then. But funny enough, you know, like I was really bad at the weightlifting portion because, you know, like I was a very strong person. I don't know if it's because I was like very strong-willed, but very, very strong. But I didn't understand like the technique for a clean and jerk or a snatch. And so I, you know, was really working hard at that. And I went to this local competition and ended up, you know, getting like this weightlifting coach reached out to me and goes, you know, you are awesome. Like we could really work on your technique and, you know, your lifts would just escalate so much to the point where I think you could go to the Olympics. And my ears just like perked up because, you know, our childhood dream was to go to the Olympics. So I was like, fuck yeah, I'm in, you know? Yeah. And so I literally, and excuse the French, you can bleep me out. I'm sorry.
You can say whatever you want and you're not offending me, certainly.
So I literally, you know, doubled down and I actually overtrained to the point where I actually hurt my back throughout the year. And, you know, like that took a lot of patience and, you know, coming back and all that. But I was really I was doing my CrossFit and then I was just like prioritizing my training and qualifying for the Rio Olympics in 2016. So in the whole process of that, like I was also doing night shifts. So, you know, when you're doing shift work and you're working nights, like your recovery is so bad.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I really wanted to make the Olympics, like I knew I needed to kind of stop doing that, but I also was not prepared to just quit my job and like, you know, not have an income. Of course, Shane was like always so supportive and, you know, he had a stable income, but I was like, before I quit my job, I need to have something else. So I ended up buying the gym that we trained at. And then I left my job. So I would run the classes and do all that. I bought the gym and then I would train when the classes weren't on. So at least we had a little bit of income from my side. Because I just didn't want to be that person. Yeah, I wanted to contribute as well. So we're 12 months later, we're at the Open again. And I, you know, still did the Open because I was like, hey, I want to lead by example. I want to do the Open for my community and all that good stuff. And week 3 of the Open, I don't know what it was, but I'm literally in the middle of my workout and I'm like, fuck this, I'm going to the games. And like I literally finished the workout, you know, everyone went home because, you know, we do a big community Friday night lights and all that fun stuff that the Open brings. And we're packing the boot of the car. And I said, Shane, we're going to the CrossFit Games this year. And he's like, what, to spectate? I said, nope, I'm going to qualify. Anyway, so like from there, like I just like doubled down on my weightlifting for the Olympics and to qualify for the CrossFit Games. Sure enough, I showed up to regionals. I like completely blocked out all the bullshit that I felt the year before and everything. And then I qualified and came third. So I made it to the CrossFit Games. So we went to the CrossFit Games and I podiumed and came second. And I was like, oh shit, I'm actually pretty good at this. And so that's kind of the moment.
On the X is proudly presented by Mechanics Wear. Known for their durability and comfort, Mechanics Wear gloves are made from top quality materials offering protection against impacts, cuts, and abrasions. They feature advanced breathability and moisture-wicking technology to keep hands cool and dry during any task. Designed with precision, these gloves provide a secure grip and flexibility, helping users work more efficiently and safely. They've certainly been my personal go-to glove for decades. Mechanics Wear gloves are available at most retailers, on mechanicswear.com, and on GSA Advantage. It's interesting because like I said, I talked to Matt Frazier on this podcast, and I've actually known Matt for a while, and there's some similarities there where you both have this clearly this kind of I'm going to prove you wrong sort of attitude, where he had some setbacks early in his, where basically like he even was like overweight and all this stuff, and like he just had this like I'm going to prove these people wrong. Like if they tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it. And you both seem to have that kind of innate attitude, so to speak. The thing I wanted to ask...
Attitude's a nice word of putting it.
No, but I mean, hey, look, it works though, right? Like there's something there's something there, clearly. The thing I wanted to ask you though, where you guys differ is the thing I asked him was, he came from an Olympic weightlifting background. That's what he grew up doing, right, as a sport. And it seemed to me that would have helped him in a huge way going into CrossFit. Because if you think of what you do in CrossFit, there's sort of like the basic stuff that kind of anybody can do, right? Like jump up on boxes and do a burpee and that kind of stuff. Then there's gymnastics movements, but the skill level of the gymnastics movements compared to like high level gymnastics is pretty low, right? Handstand push-ups, pull-ups, muscle-ups. But the weightlifting, like the Olympic weightlifting, compared to like high-end Olympic weightlifting, that gap isn't very far, right? Like, I mean, guys in the games now, they're doing, I mean, guys and girls, lots of weight, the movements are the same. So it seemed to me that would have given him a huge leg up. And he completely agreed. Like, yeah, that was a huge help for me because like the learning curve was so much, but you didn't have any of that in your background. So was there something from your athletic background that you felt like did give you a leg up? Like, was it like, man, your engine was just amazing from all of that? Or was it just tenacity on your part where again, it's like, screw these people, I'm going to make this work?
Yeah. I honestly think it's like, it was my heart, you know, like it was, and then that kind of comes across a little bit corny, but it's what you're saying, you know, like the tenacity, like the determination, the desire to go after something, you know, all deep down inside, like there was something that I was looking for that was missing at the time. And it all kind of just started to naturally progress. And, you know, the physical aspect of it all was easy in my opinion because I was athletic. I adapted to so much. I just worked really, really hard at everything, you know, because running track, that doesn't help you with thrusters or anything like that. Sure. But, you know, Shane, you know, my team behind me, supporting me along the way, like that was just, it was so incredible. And, you know, I think just everything coming together just really meshed well. And it was such an organic, not overemphasize or not, you know, like we didn't, you know, like it's really hard. Like there's a balance between trying too hard and not trying hard enough.
Yep.
Because if you try too hard and you want something too badly, you typically fall like shy of it because you're over pressuring yourself or whatever it might be. And like I've watched athletes want to win the CrossFit Games so badly that they've just fallen short of it year after year after year because of the pressure. Like they don't understand how to handle the pressure that they put on themselves. And I guess, you know, the way I've been brought up from my parents has always been, you know, just not overthinking it and not, you know, putting too much into it, but just as long as you're showing up and you know you've trained absolutely your hardest, then, you know, why not? Why can't you perform at your best? And why can't your best be the best? So simplifying it, understanding how to like embrace the pressure I put on myself, because the pressure that I do feel is coming from me. It's not coming from anywhere else. Like, don't get me wrong, there's social media and there's things that are external that are out of my control. But, you know, at the end of the day, I know what my why is. I know it's all driving from me. And sometimes when I struggle to want to show up, because there's definitely those days, I always remind myself of the team I have behind me and who are sacrificing just as much as I am to help me achieve my goals.
Yeah. You mentioned your why. So I talked to Simon Sinek on this podcast too, and you mentioned your why. So what is that why?
Well, it does change almost every year.
Okay.
When I very first started, my why was to just have stories and memories to tell my future children. Like I want my future children to live like the best life that they possibly can. And if I'm not leading by example and, showing them that anything is possible, we all say, oh, anything's possible. But if I can be living proof to my daughter or my son, whatever it might be, when Willow comes to me and says, yeah, but Mum, like, how am I going to do that? Not everyone gets to do that. I said, darling, not everyone got to go to the Olympics, but I made that happen. Like I have these stories that I can, share with her and tell her like, hey, if I can do it, so can you. You just have to apply yourself. And it almost gives her no excuses to not follow her dreams. And so I think for me, it's just about setting up and laying out a really great foundation for her so that she can, when she wants to, go out and achieve whatever it might be, she's like, you know what? I freaking can do this because, I don't have to do what everyone else is suggesting I do. Because in school, you're highly encouraged to either, be a teacher or a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it might be, go to university and get a career and stuff. And I'm not saying that that's not a good thing, but I think it's really important that that's something that you really want to do. I didn't want to do that, but I didn't know what I could do because, well, I was encouraged and forced to do something that, the school almost encouraged me to do. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because,
Yeah.
it made them look much better. But no one ever really took the time to tell me or help me understand that. And, mum and dad, they were always so encouraging to pursue whatever it was. And I guess it stemmed from them to try new things too. So like, they had me in so many different sports because they wanted to widen my horizon and be like, hey, it's not just all about running. Your running also is like, you can do swimming, you can also do tennis, you can do so many different sports. And they were also like that, showing me about camping and fishing and, so many different things.
Is this something you codify, like the why part? Do you like write that down? Do you think about it and go, okay, I'm going to write this down at some interval?
Not really.
Okay.
Only because I feel like it has to come naturally to you. So like it has to like, it's something that I will think about, throughout the off season. Like, okay, where am I in my life? What is happening? And, so let's take like last year, for example. Last year, my why was to get back and stand on top of the podium with my daughter in my hands, basically, So like I had Willow and I was like, I'm not going to let people, or it wasn't even about that. It was more about I can still do what I love with, the people I love. And having Willow was not going to take, anything away because there's this persona in the world where once you have a kid, your career ends.
Yeah,
And to an extent, it may for some people because that's what they choose to do.
Yep, sure.
But it's all from a choice. And I think I've always been a big believer in, standing by your choices that you make and standing proud for that. And so for me, I was like adamant to show that no, just because I had Willow doesn't mean that takes away my championship titles. And I believe that I can still stand on top of the podium even with having Willow. And so that's why it was so important for me to come back. And then, it kind of came full circle. I finally have my future children and I'm still doing what I love to do. And so that's like when I was standing on top of the podium, even though like the CrossFit Games was obviously a very like tragic experience in the sense of, losing a competitor and going through that whole experience. For me, it was really important to, see it through to the end and live out my goal and what my why is and turn it into a reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to get to that too, but I just want to wind the clock back a little bit to sort of like get you up. No, it's all good. In fact, you bring up the thing about, the choice you make where potentially family and career come like at odds with one another too, and like, that's something we had to, like in my own family, my wife and I were like career Navy people. And we were like, oh, we're in the Navy and we're going to be in for 20 years and do all this. And then we had a kid and we're like, no problem. We'll get an au pair and she'll take care of him. And after about 6 months of that, we were like, no, like you to my wife, she was like, you need to get out of the Navy and take care of the, and that's what she wanted to do. And we had that conversation. I was like, hey, I'm crunching the numbers. I'm like, it'll be fine. Like we can make it happen on just my salary. And she was so relieved. And like, so that was the choice we made, but to your point, it's like to each his own there, some people go a different route.
100%.
So just go back to, because this, I hadn't thought about this before, but I think this is another place where you and Matt are really similar, right? Because you were second in 2015, and then I think you were second in 2016. And I think Matt did the same thing where he was like second twice. And I remember him talking about how down he was, like how depressed he was after the second time he got second. And he was hanging out, I think, with Dan Bailey. And he was like, right after the games, like they rented some motorcycles or something. They were going out. And Dan's like, what is wrong with you? And he's like, dude, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, dude, are you kidding me? He's like, you just did something that is my goal, right? As Dan, where he's like, I would love to be in your place. And Matt just kind of flipped a switch at that point and be like, okay, I got to still commit to this, but I got to get over myself a little bit here. So what was your experience? Did you have something similar? Was it, we're like, I'm going to get back next year and get first place. And then when it was second, was it a letdown? Obviously you then went on, but what was that? What were those kind of years there where you were kind of trying to get first place?
Yeah. So like 2015, it was just such a huge shock and such an incredible experience, like, of course I came second, but I thought I won because it was like something that was totally unexpected. Being at the CrossFit Games was winning in my eyes. And then to come second was just a cherry on top.
Sure.
And I didn't even realize you got paid. So I was like, holy shit, like this is amazing, And I'm standing on top of the podium. Oh, sorry. See, like I'm literally, that's all I think of it. I'm standing on the podium and I'm looking at Katrin and I'm like, wow, she gets paid, like good for her, And it wasn't until I got off the podium, had the medal around my neck and everything. And then one of my friends comes up and goes, what a great payday. I said, yeah, for Kat, like, she did well. And I had no idea who these girls were, like they were just people like me who were, competing and doing what they really enjoyed and everything. And then, Shane and I, we were just on cloud nine, The next year I came second again and I was so upset. I was so disappointed. And I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I definitely was like really let down because I knew that I had more to give. And I knew, I didn't know how I did it, but I knew I didn't give it my absolute all. So then that made me start thinking, well, where do I go from here? Like how do I improve to actually stand on top this time? And it's just so weird because, like 1 year, it's like the most amazing thing. And then the next, it's a complete opposite feeling with the exact same result. And for me, like, I guess it wasn't until that point that I really realized there's more to it than just your physical capacity. And this is where I really matured because like my whole life, I've just been like, hey, if I don't cut corners and I train really hard, like I will be exactly where I need to be. because I know I've put the work in, and I've always trained my hardest. I've never given it, like I've never taken a day off, all that good stuff. Like I gave it my absolute all. But mentally, I never realized the power of your mental capacity until that moment. And so that's when I was like, all right, like I need to train my brain. So from that moment on, I started reading books and books and books. Like I was reading a book, 2 books every month, like I was increasing my reading capacity. I was doing my training in the gym, but I was also training outside the gym with my mental capacity. And I started to realize I've been looking at it all wrong. So my goal and the way I train was I was training to be a participant, basically, because even though my goal was always to get to the world stage, but my goal was technically never to win. And it wasn't until I realized that I was like, okay, I need to win, and I need to start looking at myself as a champion. So everything I did, every decision I made, is this going to make me a champion or not? So then once I started seeing myself as a champion and I started thinking like a champion, I became the champion.
Oh my God, I love this story so much. Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff that I want to pull out of that. One is, it's just amazing to me to think about that, where you can have the exact same outcome 2 years in a row, second place, and your attitude, like the way it impacts you mentally, can be so different. That's just crazy to think. But it's actually not. Like, I think this is such a valuable lesson for people of like the attitude you take on something that happens to you is so critical, right?
Yeah.
Because like, and it's not even like the second time around was bad. Like, it changed you in a way that made you then go become a champion, right? But just that notion that the exact same thing can happen, and like you can think about it in completely different ways. Yeah. That's kind of one component to it. The other one is, I think it's a really good lesson in showing people what they're capable of, in the sense that I think a lot of people have something like this in their lives, where something kind of comes along that's almost accidental, and you go, wow, how did I do that? How did I get there? And before that, they never would have thought it was possible. And they almost like stumble into it, and then you go, holy shit, I'm capable of that. Right. And then it changes your attitude. And I think that's a really valuable lesson too. And then the mental stuff. So I'm really curious on this. Did you then, because you're totally speaking my language here, and I love the fact that you did that, and then we're like, I got to learn and I got to kind of work on my mental game. Did you adopt mental practices too, like meditation and breath work and anything like that on top of that? Or was it more just like shifting your mindset, so to speak?
I would say it was more about shifting my mindset, because like my mom, she's very she's very into yoga. She's very into like the meditating aspect, and she always has said like how important it is to take time to reflect and all that good stuff. So like I can't say I've ever been really good at meditating, because like I'm always constantly thinking. It's something that like I will find my meditation going to the beach and having, barefoot, sand in, feet in the sand, and, being outdoors, maybe being around like the trees, all that type of stuff, like away from technology and that.
Yep.
But to sit there, and don't get me wrong, like in my training, I have to stretch and mobilize a lot. So, there are moments throughout my day that I will try and just be more present, but I don't dedicate time specifically just to sit and meditate. It was all about, like understanding how the mind works and how to feed the mind and make the mind grow and be more open-minded and that, because I guess I just never, I just thought if you physically showed up and you were at your physical best, you could do anything, because that is the reality. Your body can do anything that you want it to do. but how does it start to get to that point? And it's all from here.
Yep.
And now, like, I look back on my whole career and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not just in the gym and on the competition floor. It's in life as well. It's how we approach things in life. Do we look at ourselves as a victim in life? You know, do we find ourselves constantly being, you know, put in situations and you're like, why is it always me? It's like, because you're putting yourself in that position. You need to get out of this victim mentality and change it. And you're the only person who's going to change the way you live your life. And so that is exactly, it was like an epiphany when I realized that, because Rich Froning, he had an interview one time and he goes, I don't compete to just be here. Like, I compete to win. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh, that's a bit sad, you know, like you're kind of taking away the enjoyment and like the whole experience, right? And no, like now I understand what he means. Like, I'm not training my ass off day after day, sacrificing time with my loved ones, with my daughter, to just participate at the CrossFit Games. I'm training and, you know, hitting the gym so damn hard every day to win, because that is the only option.
Yeah.
And so, like, especially last year when, you know, Lazar had passed away, you know, obviously it was so tragic, but I couldn't bring myself to think, okay, like, no, I'm going to like quit. Like, one, I know Lazar wouldn't freaking quit. And two, like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to keep competing and finish off the goal, because the job is winning and standing on top of the podium. And there was nothing else that I was like prepared to do.
Yeah. It's interesting. The the story I always think about, where you mentioned about kind of like, if you're in peak physical shape, like your body is capable of doing the thing, but it doesn't matter if your mental game is off. The one I always think of is Simone Biles in the Olympics, where,
Yes.
right, she had the thing go on, whatever that was, right? And I don't exactly know. But the reality is, either whether it was just kind of dizziness or anxiety or whatever was going on there, at that moment, she's the best gymnast in the world, totally physically capable of doing everything that she needs to do. But when this isn't right, it doesn't matter, right? Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, the head stuff has to be squared away for it to count, right? For it to go out there and actually do your best to perform. Yeah. Were you, of all these books you were reading, was there a few that like you would say, these books really changed my perspective or like my way of thinking or had a huge impact on me? Yeah.
Do you know what? Yes. So like, the book, How to Think Like a Champion.
Okay.
How to Become a Champion. Atomic Habits.
Yep. Great book.
You know, like books that, you know, were just very self-developing and self-help. But what they all were singing were the same thing. You know, It was like these books that I was picking up were just always talking about the exact same thing. And you know, like, what's that saying where it's like, you know, you need 7 impressions before you start to like really take notice of it.
Something like that.
It was almost like that. Like, I was reading and I was like, oh, cool. And then all of a sudden I was reading, I was like, oh, that's what the other book was saying. And then I was reading more and then it was like, okay. But it was like that training that I was doing it. And that's the way I kind of phrase it and look at it. And, you know, it was that was really helping me. And the more time I dedicated to that, the stronger I got at it. And so, you know, like my initial like upbringings and what always has come naturally to me where, you know, like I would say it's a little bit of ego. I would say, you know, like a lot of, I guess I really know how to work my emotions to my advantage. Like, I just was able to kind of put everything in the equation and just really make it work for me. And so that's what was, I think, so beneficial. And it was just the time that I dedicated to it, because it was my full-time job, right? You know, like I trained, but I didn't just train physically, I did the mental training as well. And then, it was, the more I talked about it, the more I realized, how, people in the military, Navy SEALs, they go through all this training and stuff. And that's where I realized, obviously you can get really uncomfortable with a lot of the physical aspects of what you guys do in your training. But as long as you break it mentally, you're going to succeed. And so that's where I was like, and then it started understanding, where the origin of CrossFit came from and, how everyone kind of thinks of how they do CrossFit and all this. It's hard, but everything's freaking hard. It's just a matter of how badly do you want it? And I just wanted it really badly because I tell you what, I didn't want to go back and have a 9-to-5 job. I didn't want to go back to university. That would have been me failing. And, I kind of instilled this fear of failing on the back of my, shoulder just to remind me hey, either show up today or fail for the rest of your life.
Hey everybody, Chris Irwin here, Communications Director for the Navy SEAL Foundation, the On the X podcast host. So IRONCLAD is our video production company. They are our podcast production company, and they've been with us since before I was even at the foundation, so more than 6 years. They're pretty much in some way plugged in with just about everything we do at the foundation, certainly on the communications side of things, and I honestly don't know what I would do without them. So they are absolutely top shelf in every regard in what they do. They're able to capture things that really look authentic, especially when it comes to some of the operator footage that can be challenging to do. And everything else is just done at such a high level that I don't really have to think about it or worry about it. If you or your organization or your company are looking for video production, if you're looking for post-production, podcast hosting, these guys can do it all. Check them out, ironcladagency.com, highly recommended. What was it like for you to then go? So was there a specific between 2016, 2017, where now you're first place and then it's every year after that you're getting that? Was there anything, a very specific thing, or was that changed that for you, or was it just this kind of mindset shift? Was that the big difference, or was there a training aspect to it too?
No, I wouldn't say it was training, because I never really, my training has evolved as I've evolved as an athlete, there's things that I don't really need to do today that I used to do, because technically when I very first started CrossFit, I was already, 5-6 years behind everyone else who was competing. So I almost had to do double the training that they were doing to play catch up for the first few years of my career. And then as we've evolved as athletes, and as Shane has evolved as a coach as well, we have more to play with too, right? His experience as a coach, he learns more as well. And then, we experiment and we evolve and we go from there. But to me, it was really about understanding the importance of that mental capacity, and then actually the goal of winning. Mm-hmm. I was achieving my goals every year prior to that. And technically, even in 2016, I achieved my goal of coming second, because I literally said, all I want to do is come second or better. And that the disappointment is right there. I didn't aim high enough.
Yeah.
And I realized I'm capable of more. So when you're capable of more and you fell short or you didn't aim high enough, that's the disappointing part.
No, totally. Yeah. Yeah. I completely get this. I mean, I'm not winning the CrossFit Games anytime soon, but in my own life, in my own, circumstances and things I've been through, I've had similar things where you just realize, wow, I'm, again, sort of accidentally almost, you're like, wow, I'm capable of that. And why wasn't I doing that the whole time? I could have done that. What was it like go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, everyone, not everyone's going to the CrossFit Games.
Sure.
But everyone has to have these moments in order to evolve and everything. And it could be in any career, and it all transfers over. And I think people just think, oh, wow, you know, like she's so good because she competes and is like a world champion. It's like, no, like, well, if you put me in a completely different environment, what am I capable of there? But I'm going to still apply what I've learned as a CrossFit athlete over there. And most likely I'll succeed because I know how to embrace the challenge and the adversity and everything that I'm facing.
Yeah. What was it like to get notoriety out of this? To go from from basically just like the rest of us to all of a sudden you're famous now, at least in the world of CrossFit and certainly beyond. I think once you sort of winning the CrossFit Games that many times, you're getting notoriety. What was that like for you?
It is amazing to meet people all over the world, and, you know, to have people come up and take photos and, you know, recognize me for my efforts. Like it's unbelievable. But the media and the attention that you get, let me just say, I'm not envious of any celebrity out there.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the CrossFit Games itself and kind of the evolution over the last few years, because you've now been there for going on 10 years, and not only just seen it go from LA to Madison to Texas now to Albany, right, this next year, but just how has it changed in terms of the competition, you know, the I don't want to say necessarily the leadership, but just like, does it feel ever the same? Or are there things about it where you're like, I wish it weren't like this, or I wish this were different?
Yeah. The one thing that's very consistent is the inconsistency of it all.
Mm.
And life is inconsistent. And the good thing about what I appreciate about that is you have to adapt and evolve as life progresses, because we don't know what the future holds. You know, you may be like faced with something that you're going to have to really dig deep and kind of push through. And with the CrossFit Games and the CrossFit season and how it's, you know, transformed throughout the years, it's always so different. And it's never the same thing year after year after year. It's always changing. And at this point, I'm just so used to it being different. It's really kind of all I want to say about it.
No, got it. Is there a conflict, so to speak, between sort of CrossFit as a exercise methodology, affiliates around the world, and the sport of CrossFit, the competitive, you know, watch on television, whatever, show up as is that a thing where, because I think some people feel like those are not necessarily in conflict, like head on, but like there's some friction there where it's like it should be one or the other, or it should be more of one than the other. I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on that.
I definitely think that there is a really nice, like it does complement each other in a way, because now, like in the past leadership or ownership haven't enjoyed the CrossFit Games because it's taken away from the training methodology of CrossFit, where I actually would disagree with that, because all over the world, having athletes, it draws attention to the sport and to CrossFit itself.
Yeah.
So having the CrossFit Games has been so great for CrossFit and the training methodology, because people are like, oh, what is this? And holy, like, look at these incredible athletes and what they're capable of. You know, I want to get my kids into that. I want to try this, you know. However, it can also intimidate people as well. And we've definitely got a lot of people that are intimidated by CrossFit because they think, oh, I can't do that because I can't do ring muscle ups or anything like that. But once you really start to educate yourself on CrossFit, you know, you don't have to do what everyone else is doing, or you only do what you're capable of doing and what you want to do. And it's not until you actually get into the community aspect of it from a training point of view and going into those gyms that you start to realize like you have full control of what you're capable of doing, you know, whether you want to push yourself and become an athlete or whether you actually want to just simply go day by day and just keep maintaining a really fit, healthy lifestyle. So I think that there's pros and cons, you know, it's a little bit relatable, kind of like NFL, right? You know, if you're an NFL fan, well, your kids are going to be growing up doing NFL because they want to be an NFL player, you know, or whatever it might be. So like there is that relatability and that thing to aspire to when you have the CrossFit Games and stuff. Diving a little bit deeper into the CrossFit Games and, you know, CrossFit, do I think CrossFit should be running the CrossFit Games? Maybe not. And I mean that with full respect, and I've actually, you know, been quite vocal about this to Don and some of the team people at CrossFit. I think the CrossFit Games has become very big, so big that they almost need like a third party to run the event and them help, you know, finesse it and keep it CrossFit related. And, you know, because they're the ones that know what the affiliates and athletes love, right?
Yep.
I definitely think Dave Castro should be programming for the CrossFit Games because I personally have really appreciated what Dave has done for CrossFit and for us as athletes. And what happened last year was a freak accident, you know, but I definitely believe that Dave has always had his best interests at heart. And I'm upsetting a lot of people by saying this, but I'm also standing true to how I feel because I think that Dave really cares about us athletes. And I think that Dave really cares about how the CrossFit Games runs. And he looks at all the tiny little pieces that not everyone looks at. And, you know, we've had different programmers in the past, and I do believe that there was a lot of things missed. And, you know, like these are just my opinions, whether they're right or wrong. You know, this is just how I have felt. And I feel like I can say this type of stuff because I've experienced so many different competitions. I've experienced so many different programs, you know, throughout my career as a competitor. Dave runs the best event, in my opinion. It programs the best event, in my opinion. But again, that also comes down to what people are trying to find. You know, the Rogue Invitational isn't trying to find the fittest. They're trying to find, you know, the workhorse or, you know, like the bigger athlete. But the CrossFit Games are trying to find the fittest, and I think Dave does a really good job of that. But I do also believe that a third party should run the event. That, you know, like because they specialize in running events and that type of thing. So, you know, that like I can't sit here though saying that I'm going to do a better job because I don't know what it takes, right? I'm just talking from experience. And I do think that it can get better.
Yeah. Talk a little bit just about, I mean, you've mentioned it multiple times, but the, you know, Lazar, the death that happened last year, where were you when that happened? Were you close by in the water?
So, I was running out of the water as he was drowning. Like you actually could see it on film.
Yep.
And so like that's like, it's just the most horrific thing, you know, like it's one, like so shocking and something that's so unexpected, but you know, he didn't deserve that. All he ever wanted to do was just be an athlete and win the CrossFit Games. And, you know, like he just had such ambitious goals that, you know, he was on the right trajectory to achieving, and, you know, it's just been robbed of him. But then when I actually found out that he had drowned, I was back in my Airbnb getting ready for, you know, the next event. And I actually had gone to bed and was having a sleep. and Shane woke me up when they got the news. And, you know, we had people on the ground, like waking up to the news that Shane was sharing. Like, I just didn't believe it. And I thought he had just taken, you know, a ride and forgot to check out. Like, I really had no idea that, you know, he had legitimately drowned. And I honestly, like, it was just one of the worst experiences, you know, like you don't want anyone to die, right? And people do die in competition quite regularly. Like, when you actually look into it, you know, just a couple, like, we have this sailing race, Sydney to Hobart yacht race, and 2 sailors died during it. And that was only a couple months ago. And it's just one of those things that's, it's just the saddest thing. Like, you know, no one wants to do that, but they're like freak accidents. And I guess, like, whatever decision you choose to do, you got to understand the risks and everything. But as CrossFit athletes, you don't really think, oh, I could drown here, or I could die here, you know? So I think that's probably what's so shocking. Like, when you get in a sailing boat, you're like, oh, I could be knocked overboard, or, you know, this is quite dangerous. You don't really ever think working out or, you know, exercising is going to be that dangerous, but it happens.
And outside of the sort of event committee or what, you know, whatever, like organization that could come in, are there other things that you think should change as a result of that?
I definitely think that we can always improve. And I think I'd be a bit premature if I was to say, yeah, we need to do X, Y, and Z. But the reality is you can always do better. You can always, you know, have more safety protocols and stuff. And, you know, it's just a real shame that it has to come to, like, a death has to come about for people to talk about it. You know, like, it should be something that we think about beforehand, sure, right? To reduce it. It was just such a tragic thing. And I just wish we could rewind time.
Sure, of course.
To be honest, like,
of course. I really appreciate the conversation. There are a few things I would love to get to, but we'll save it for another time. Maybe we can do this again in a year or two, you know?
Yeah.
But I really appreciate it. I think last thing is, I don't know this at all. Are you doing this again this year? Are you making another run in 2025?
Yeah, well, I'm not too sure. Right now I'm actually just focusing on some high rocks. So you've heard of high rocks
I have,
before?
yes. Yep.
Yeah. And so, I just was partnering up with James Newbury in Melbourne in December last year. And we actually qualified for the World Championships in Chicago in June.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was like, oh, shit, okay, yeah, right. All right, well, let's start training for this. So I still have to make some big decisions, you know, like I said, you know, the training for high rocks is, and high rocks and CrossFit are very, very different. They can be quite complementary, but not if you want to, you know, win the CrossFit Games or if you want to win high rocks. So I'm trying to navigate that and trying to figure it out. It's getting pretty close to the open. So I got to make some hard decisions, but we'll see. I'll definitely be, you know, supportive and, you know, a part of it to an extent, I'm sure, no matter what it looks like. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people that'll be very much waiting with bated breath to see what happens there, you know?
Yeah.
So, well, whatever you do, good luck. Like I said, thanks so much for being up early with me and talking with me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for inspiring so many people. And yeah, hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to On the X, the official podcast of the Navy SEAL Foundation and an IRONCLAD original series sponsored by Mechanics Wear. Learn more at NavySEALFoundation.org or text On the X to 60104 to join our subscriber list. See you next time.